Through the Fog of Death, a journey into the heart of the cursed village. It was said that no one who ventured into the cursed village ever returned. The villagers spoke of it in hushed whispers, their voices trembling as they recounted the tales of the fog that swallowed souls whole. But for Clara, the mystery was an invitation, a long-lost letter from her grandfather, a man whose legacy had been erased by tragedy, contained the final piece of a puzzle she had been piecing together for years. The village was her last clue, and Clara, driven by the need for answers, was determined to face whatever lay beyond the mist. She arrived at the village just as twilight crept across the sky, casting long, eerie shadows. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of the dense fog that clung to the ground like a shroud, blocking the path ahead. It was thick and unnatural, swirling and moving in ways that defied logic, as though it had a mind of its own. She could barely see her hand in front of her face, yet a feeling of being watched crept over her. Despite the overwhelming sense of dread, she pressed on. As Clara stepped further into the village, the silence became suffocating. Not a bird, nor a leaf stirred. The buildings, dilapidated and crumbling, seemed frozen in time. The windows were boarded up, the doors sealed tight. Yet Clara could sense life just beyond the mist, a village that had been alive once, now held prisoner by something far darker than death. Her mind raced back to the tales her grandfather had told her as a child. The village had been cursed, struck by a mysterious plague that had wiped out most of its inhabitants. But it wasn't just death that claimed the village, it was something more sinister. The fog was born of the curse itself, an ancient evil that trapped souls within its tendrils. Those who had died weren't truly gone. They remained, forever wandering, lost in the fog. As she wandered through the heart of the village, Clara noticed strange markings etched into the ground, arcane symbols, worn and faded by time. They seemed to pulse faintly under her feet, as though reacting to her presence. Her grandfather's letter had warned her of the ritual that needed to be completed, but the details had been cryptic. All she knew was that she had to find the source of the curse, and destroy it. Her journey led her to the center of the village, where an ancient church stood, its steeple reaching into the fog like a twisted finger pointing towards the heavens. The door creaked open at her touch, revealing a dimly lit interior. Inside, a strange energy filled the air, thick and heavy, almost tangible. The walls were lined with old, faded paintings of people, some with eyes that followed her every move. Clara's heart pounded as she ventured deeper into the church, drawn toward the altar. There, she saw a stone tablet inscribed with more of the arcane symbols. The atmosphere seemed to shift, and the fog outside began to swirl violently, as if responding to her presence. It was then that she understood. The village wasn't just cursed by death, it was cursed by grief, by the souls of those who had never been allowed to move on. A figure materialized before her, a man, his form translucent and barely visible through the fog. His eyes were hollow, his face twisted in a silent scream. He was one of the lost souls, trapped in the fog forever, and as he reached out to her, Clara could feel the weight of the curse pressing down on her, threatening to swallow her whole. But Clara did not falter. She had come for answers, and she would not leave without them. With trembling hands, she placed her grandfather's letter on the altar, and as the ink began to glow faintly, the fog around her started to recede. The man's mournful wail filled the air, but Clara stood her ground. She closed her eyes and recited the words her grandfather had left her, an ancient incantation to break the curse. The ground trembled beneath her, and the fog began to dissipate, revealing the village in its full, tragic beauty. The souls of the lost rose from the earth, their faces softening as they were finally freed from their torment. Clara watched in silence as they faded into the light, their forms dissipating like mist in the morning sun. The village, now empty of its curse, stood quiet and still, as though waiting for a new beginning. Clara turned to leave, her heart heavy with the weight of what she had witnessed. But she knew one thing for certain: she had freed the souls of the village, and in doing so, she had unlocked a part of her grandfather's legacy that would live on in her, forever. Through the fog of death, Clara had journeyed into the heart of the cursed village, and emerged with the truth. Through the fog of death, a journey into the heart of the cursed village, continued. Clara stood in the clearing of the village, the fog now lifting, revealing the remnants of a once thriving community. The heavy weight that had clung to the air moments before had lifted, but an eerie silence remained, as though the world was holding its breath. The villagers who had once lived here were no more. The only traces left of them were the faint echoes in the wind, whispers of a life long gone. But even in the absence of the curse, Clara felt the pull to explore further. There was something more, something her grandfather's letter had hinted at but never fully explained. It was as though the final piece of the puzzle remained hidden, waiting to be discovered. As the sun dipped lower into the horizon, painting the sky with shades of crimson and gold, Clara followed the trail toward the edge of the village, where the trees grew dense and wild, encroaching on the land. It was there, just beyond the clearing, that Clara found the forgotten graveyard. The stones were weathered and cracked, the names faded by time, but one particular stone stood out, larger than the rest, its surface smooth and unmarred by age. A single name was etched upon it: Isabel Sutherland. Her grandfather had never spoken of an Isabel, but the name sent a chill down her spine, a fleeting memory tugging at the edges of her consciousness. Clara reached out and brushed her fingers over the inscription. As soon as she did, a soft hum filled the air, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to tremble. The fog, which had once disappeared, now began to return, but this time, it was different. The mist twisted and writhed as if drawn to the grave, coiling around Clara's legs. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, the air grew cold, and Clara's breath became visible. The fog now swirling in eerie patterns, resembling human shapes, moving with purpose. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, slow and deliberate, as though someone, or something, was walking toward her. Clara's pulse quickened, and she spun around, her heart racing. The figure that appeared before her was that of a woman, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes a deep, hollow black. Her clothes were tattered, the remnants of a once wealthy gown now decayed and rotten. "Isabel," Clara whispered, her voice shaky, but her curiosity overwhelming. The woman's lips curled into a sinister smile. "You seek the truth, child," she rasped, her voice barely more than a whisper carried by the wind. "But truth comes at a cost." Clara stood her ground. What happened here? Why were these people trapped? The woman's dark eyes glimmered with an unsettling knowledge, and she reached out, her fingers brushing Clara's cheek like cold fire. The curse was not born of death alone. It was born of betrayal, greed, and the hunger for power. Isabel Sutherland, was the catalyst, the key to the suffering that plagued this place. Clara recoiled, her mind racing. Betrayal? Power? What do you mean? The figure of Isabel drifted closer, her form now solidifying in the fog. "I was once the leader of this village, beloved and powerful, but I sought more power, more control. In my desperation, I struck a deal with dark forces, ancient and twisted. The fog you see, it is the price of that power, a price that has kept us all bound in this wretched place." Clara's blood ran cold as she understood. Isabel's greed had doomed not only the village but herself and everyone who had lived there. The curse was her legacy, one that stretched far beyond death, trapping the souls of the innocent in a never-ending cycle of torment. "You were the one who caused this," Clara said, her voice trembling with anger. "But I've broken the curse. Your soul is free. You don't have to suffer anymore." Isabel's hollow eyes flickered with a fleeting glimmer of remorse, but the smile never left her face. "You think you've broken it?" she hissed, her voice rising in anger. "The fog is only a reflection of the curse. You've freed the souls, yes, but there is more. A curse like this, it cannot be undone so easily." With that, the ground shook violently, and Clara fell to her knees as the fog thickened around her once more. Shadows emerged from the mist, twisting and writhing like dark tendrils, reaching toward her. The graveyard seemed to come alive, the gravestones rattling as if they were about to rise from the earth. Clara felt a surge of panic rise in her chest, but she refused to back down. She had come this far, and she would not let Isabel's legacy destroy everything she had worked for. The answers were within her reach, she just had to unlock them. "Then I will finish what you started," Clara muttered to herself. "I will make it right." Clara's hand closed around the letter her grandfather had given her, the paper warm now, as though imbued with a strange energy. Her grandfather had known that this final encounter would not be simple. He had warned her that there would be sacrifices, challenges, and decisions to be made, but he had also believed in her strength. The wind howled, the fog spiraled, and the world seemed to close in around her, and in that moment, Clara understood what she must do. The curse could not be broken by destroying the village or by banishing the souls, it had to be confronted at its source. With a deep breath, Clara spoke the final words of the incantation her grandfather had taught her. I free you, Isabel. I forgive you. A brilliant light erupted from the grave, washing away the darkness, banishing the fog, and silencing the whispers. Isabel's figure crumbled into dust, her form dissolving into the wind. The fog that had held the village captive for centuries began to dissipate, and the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. Clara stood alone in the now quiet graveyard. The weight of the curse finally lifted. The village, though scarred, was free, and so was Clara, her journey into the heart of the cursed village now complete. But as the fog disappeared and the sunlight bathed the land in warmth, Clara knew that some parts of the past could never be forgotten, and some mysteries, no matter how deeply buried, would always leave their mark. The truth had been found, the curse had been lifted, and Clara was ready to face whatever came next. Through the fog of death, a journey into the heart of the cursed village continued. Days passed, and the village slowly began to heal. The fog had completely lifted, and the land that had been so long trapped in sorrow now felt free. Clara stayed a little longer, wandering through the now serene streets. The once barren house is now silent but full of stories. With every step, the shadows of the past seemed to fade into the light, and the oppressive weight that had defined the village was replaced by an eerie peace. But as the village changed, so did Clara. Her time in the cursed place had not only freed its souls, it had awakened something within her, something she hadn't expected. She had always been the curious granddaughter, the seeker of truths, but now, she could feel the subtle shift in her own spirit. The answers she had uncovered about the curse, about Isabel, had left a profound mark on her. There was something about her grandfather's legacy, something darker and deeper that still called to her. It wasn't just the curse of the village that needed to be confronted. It was the legacy of the Sutherland family, a legacy that seemed tied to something far more ancient and dangerous than Clara had ever realized. One evening, as Clara was walking through the village square, she stumbled upon a small, hidden courtyard at the edge of the town, tucked away behind an old stone wall covered in ivy. The area seemed untouched by time. In the center of the courtyard stood an ornate stone well, its surface covered in moss, the rim etched with symbols that looked eerily familiar. Clara crouched down to examine the well, her heart racing as she recognized the markings, identical to those she had seen etched in the ground of the village and the church's altar. A chill ran through her as a thought crept into her mind. This well, hidden away from sight, was not a mere relic of the past, it was something far more. Without thinking, she knelt and peered into the well's dark depths. The water was still, black as ink, reflecting only the faint light of the setting sun. But as Clara stared into the darkness, her reflection began to distort, twisting and shifting, until the image of her grandfather's face appeared, faint but unmistakable. Clara. The voice came from the depths, a whisper carried by the wind. Her breath caught in her throat. Grandfather? She whispered, her pulse quickening. The image flickered, and for a moment, Clara thought she saw something, or someone, move in the shadows of the well. Her curiosity surged, and before she could stop herself, she reached out, her fingers brushing the cold stone of the well. The moment her skin made contact with the surface, a sudden, violent pull yanked her forward, and with a gasp, she tumbled into the darkness below. The fall seemed endless. She screamed as the air rushed past her, her body disoriented and weightless. Finally, with a jarring thud, Clara landed hard on the ground, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. For a moment, everything was still, the air thick with a strange, oppressive energy. Slowly, she pushed herself up, her head spinning as she looked around. She found herself in a vast underground cavern, illuminated by faint, flickering torches stuck into the walls. The air smelled damp and stale, and the sound of dripping water echoed through the dark space. The cavern was enormous, and at its center was a massive stone structure, an altar of sorts, ancient and crumbling, covered in the same symbols she had seen throughout the village. The atmosphere was thick with a sense of dread, and Clara felt an overwhelming pressure on her chest as if the weight of the world was bearing down on her. In the center of the cavern, an immense figure stood, a shadowy, twisted form, its features obscured by the darkness. It towered over her, its presence suffocating. "Welcome, Clara Sutherland," a deep voice rumbled from the shadows. "You've come to face your fate." Clara's heart raced as she took a step back, her mind spinning with questions. Who are you? What is this place? The figure slowly stepped forward, its form becoming clearer, an ancient creature. Its body covered in tattered robes that seemed to shift and rise like the fog itself. Its eyes were dark pools, endless and void-like, staring at her with a knowing intensity. "I am the source," the creature said, its voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "The true curse of the Sutherland bloodline." Clara felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The figure's words made her blood run cold. The curse of her family, the darkness that had plagued the village and her grandfather. It was all tied together. "You were meant to find me, Clara," the creature continued, its voice growing softer, more insidious. "Your grandfather was merely a pawn in a game that has spanned generations. His actions, his deal with Isabel, were only the beginning. You, child, are the last key." Clara's stomach twisted as she tried to make sense of the creature's words. "What are you talking about? I broke the curse. The village is free." The creature laughed, a low, echoing sound that reverberated through the cavern. "The curse cannot be so easily undone. It has taken root in your blood. You are the final piece of the puzzle. The power within you is what has kept this place hidden, what has kept me alive." Clara's breath caught in her throat as the realization dawned on her. The legacy of her family, the bloodline she had inherited, was the true source of the curse. Her grandfather had never truly freed the village. He had only sealed it away, bound by the power that Clara now held. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "I won't let you control me." The creature's eyes glinted with malice. "It's not a matter of choice, Clara. The curse has already claimed you. You cannot escape it." Clara's mind raced, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to find a way out, a way to destroy the creature and break the true curse. But how? The power it spoke of, was it in her blood? Or was it something far darker, something that had been awakened by her presence? In that moment, Clara understood. The key to breaking the curse wasn't in defeating the creature. It was in facing the darkness within herself and making a choice. She could either succumb to the bloodline's legacy, allowing the creature to take control of her and continue the cycle of suffering, or she could destroy it, even if it meant sacrificing everything she had known. With determination flooding her veins, Clara took a deep breath, drawing on the strength she had gained in the village. "I will not be your pawn," she declared, her voice steady. "I will end this, for my family, for everyone." And with that, she stepped forward, ready to face the final battle, the battle that would determine the fate of her bloodline, her legacy, and the world beyond the fog. Through the fog of death, a journey into the heart of the cursed village continued. The cavern seemed to tremble with Clara's defiant words, the weight of the air thickening, pressing in on her as the ancient creature's laughter echoed through the vast, oppressive space. It leaned forward, its form shifting, dark robes billowing like the fog that had once consumed the village. Its eyes, endless pools of void, fixed on Clara, an unholy hunger in them. "You truly think you can defeat me?" the creature rasped, its voice a low growl. "You are of my blood, Clara. You are my heir. There is no escape from your destiny." Clara's heart hammered in her chest. The realization that the creature spoke the truth, her bloodline was the source of the curse, of the power that kept this ancient being alive, settled over her like a suffocating cloak. The very thing she had inherited from her grandfather, from generations long past, had bound her to this moment. She was the key, the final piece, but that did not mean she had to submit to it. She glanced around the cavern, her mind racing. The altar at the center of the room pulsed with dark energy, the symbols engraved into its surface glowing faintly. It was the source, the heart of the curse, the power that had kept the village trapped and had fueled the creature's existence. If she could destroy the altar, perhaps she could sever the bond between herself and the creature. Clara focused, taking a deep breath, steadying herself. The power that the creature had spoken of, it was not just an external force. It was something deep within her. Her grandfather had been a part of this curse. Yes, but so was she. She was both the inheritor and the potential destroyer. The bloodline could bind her, but it could also be the key to her freedom. The creature smiled, a twisted, knowing expression. "You think you have a choice, don't you? That you can break free of the chains that have been forged across generations. But you were born for this moment. You cannot run from it." Clara shook her head, her mind sharpened by the pain and loss she had endured. She had come so far, not just to save the village, but to save herself, to end the curse that had defined her family, that had dictated her path before she was even born. No, she said firmly. I was born to end this, not to continue it. With newfound resolve, Clara stepped toward the altar, her every movement deliberate, her body surging with a strength she had never known. The creature's mocking laughter echoed behind her, but she refused to let it deter her. The symbols on the altar grew brighter, as if trying to warn her or stop her, but Clara was undeterred. Her grandfather's final words, spoken so long ago, flashed through her mind. The strength you seek lies within you. Clara, you are more than just your bloodline. You are the one who can break the chain. As she reached the altar, Clara could feel the dark energy radiating from it, a pulse that thrummed in the air, in her very veins. She placed her hands on the cold stone, and for a moment, everything fell silent. The creature's laughter faded, the wind in the cavern stilled, and the world seemed to hold its breath. She could feel the curse, the power, the dark legacy of her bloodline coiling around her. But she did not flinch. Instead, she reached deep within herself, drawing on that same strength her grandfather had spoken of, the strength that had carried her through the fog, through the village, and into this moment. I will not be your vessel, she whispered, her voice steady. I will not carry this curse any longer. The moment she spoke those words, a blinding light erupted from the altar, and Clara's hands began to glow with an otherworldly brilliance. The symbols etched into the stone began to crack, the dark energy writhing and struggling against the light she summoned. The creature howled in fury, its form twisting and convulsing as though the light was burning it from the inside out. No, the creature roared. You cannot defeat me. You cannot erase me from existence. But Clara didn't waver. She closed her eyes, focusing all her energy on the light, on the power within her, and on the words she had learned to embrace. She was not a puppet to be controlled. She was her own person, no longer bound by her bloodline, no longer chained to the past. With a final surge of power, Clara pressed her hands harder against the altar. The light intensified, consuming the dark energy, unraveling the curse piece by piece. The cavern trembled violently, the ground shaking as if the very foundation of the world were cracking open. The creature screamed, its form disintegrating, its voice fading into nothingness as the light swallowed it whole. And then, there was silence. Clara stood in the center of the cavern, her hands still glowing faintly. The altar before her now cracked and shattered, the oppressive weight that had filled the air lifted, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Clara breathed freely. The curse that had plagued her family, the village, and the creature itself was gone. The shadows in the cavern receded, and Clara felt a warmth spread through her, as though the sun itself had pierced through the darkness. She turned and made her way back toward the well, her heart pounding with the remnants of fear and triumph. When she stepped back into the courtyard above, the fog had completely vanished, and the village was bathed in the soft light of dawn. The village was free. Clara stood there for a long moment, gazing at the peaceful land that stretched before her. She had done it. She had broken the curse, not just for the village, but for herself. Her family's legacy, marred by betrayal and darkness, had been wiped away, and in its place, there was only light. But as the sun rose higher, Clara knew that her journey was far from over. The power she had unlocked, the strength she had tapped into, was a part of her now, and though the curse was gone, there were still other mysteries, other challenges that would test her resolve. For now, though, Clara was at peace, the village was free, and she was free too. As the fog dissipated, so did the last remnants of the past, and in its place, a new beginning bloomed. Through the fog of death, a journey into the heart of the cursed village continued. Weeks passed, and the village gradually became a place of healing, its new beginnings blooming with every sunrise. Clara stayed for a while longer, helping to restore what had been broken and abandoned. The village that had once been a ghost town, consumed by the fog and its cursed past, began to see life again. Slowly but surely, families returned, drawn by the tales of its newfound peace, unaware of the darkness that had once plagued it. Clara, however, could not fully rest. There were still questions, lingering uncertainties that haunted her thoughts. Her grandfather's legacy had been sealed, but what about the power she had unlocked? What about the light she had summoned from within herself? The force that had destroyed the creature and broken the curse? It felt like an uncharted territory within her, a power she had barely begun to understand. One afternoon, as Clara walked along the edge of the village, A familiar figure emerged from the mist that still lingered over the mountains in the distance. A tall, shadowy form, cloaked in dark robes, the figure of an old traveler. Clara Sutherland. The traveler's voice was deep, carrying a weight of ancient knowledge. "I've been waiting for you." Clara froze in her tracks, her heart skipping a beat. She hadn't seen this figure in the village before, and his presence, though calm, sent a shiver down her spine. His hood was pulled low, obscuring his face, but Clara could feel his gaze piercing through her. "You've come a long way," the traveler continued, "but your journey is not yet finished." Clara's stomach churned with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. She had thought that with the curse broken, she could finally return to a normal life, but the traveler's words made her realize how naive she had been. "What do you mean?" she asked, taking a cautious step back. The traveler's lips curled upward, and though his face remained hidden, Clara could feel the weight of his smile. The curse was just a part of something much larger. The forces that bound this land, that bound your bloodline, are ancient, and now that the fog is gone, you will feel the pull of what lies beyond. Clara's mind raced, and she felt a familiar, unsettling sensation wash over her. The power she had tapped into had come from somewhere. It had been a force that felt older than the village itself, something tied to the land, to the blood that ran through her veins. Her grandfather had known about it. She realized now that he had never fully broken the curse, he had only sealed it, hidden it away, and in doing so, he had set the stage for the next part of the story. "Who are you?" Clara demanded, trying to steady her breath, her resolve hardening. "What do you want from me?" The traveler stepped forward, his presence expanding in the space around him. "I am someone who knows the truth. I am a keeper of the old ways, and I have seen the potential within you. The curse you destroyed was merely one layer. The real power, the true force that binds your family, lies far deeper." Clara's pulse quickened. She had thought the fog was the end of the story, but now, it seemed that the true danger was yet to come. The village, the creature, the fog, it had all been a part of something larger, something that had only begun to unravel. "You must come with me," the traveler said. "There is much more to learn, and much more to do." Clara shook her head, unwilling to take another step without knowing more. "What's at the end of this journey? What am I meant to do?" The traveler's eyes gleamed from beneath his hood, the faintest glint of something ancient and knowing. "The land you freed from the fog, the bloodline you've inherited, all of it is tied to a force older than time itself. If you wish to understand what you've unleashed, and if you wish to stop what is coming, you must journey beyond the village. The answers lie there, in the mountains, in the forgotten temples, and in the lands where the fog began." Clara felt a pull, an irresistible force deep inside her that urged her forward. There was no turning back. She knew this was not just about saving the village anymore. It was about understanding the true nature of the curse she had broken and what it meant for her family, for herself, and for the world she now found herself a part of. With a heavy heart, Clara made her decision. "Lead the way," she said, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "I'll go with you." The traveler gave a slight nod, his shadowy form shifting with ease, and turned to begin walking toward the distant mountains. Clara followed closely behind, her heart both heavy with the weight of what lay ahead and lightened by the hope that this final journey would be the last test of her strength. The path was uncertain, but she would face it as she had faced everything before, with courage, with the knowledge that she was no longer bound by the past, but free to choose her own destiny. As they walked, the mist thickened once more, swirling around them in strange patterns. It was as if the land was breathing, alive with secrets, and Clara couldn't help but wonder what other mysteries lay hidden in the fog of her family's forgotten history. The mountains loomed ahead, dark and formidable, their peaks lost in the clouds. Beyond them, Clara knew, lay the truth, the true source of the curse, the power that had shaped her life and the lives of those around her, waited to be discovered. And she was ready to face it. Through the fog of death, a journey into the heart of the cursed village continued. The journey through the mountains was long, and the further they went, the heavier the air seemed to become. The traveler, leading Clara through narrow, winding paths, did not speak much, but his presence was commanding. Clara could feel the weight of his silence pressing down on her, as if every step forward took them closer to something inevitable. The landscape around them grew more desolate as they ascended the mountains. Sparse trees clung to the steep cliffs, their twisted branches gnarled and reaching out like the fingers of the past. The fog seemed to follow them, swirling like a living entity that refused to let go of the earth. As the path grew steeper, Clara could feel the power she had unleashed growing stronger, echoing within her like a distant pulse. Finally, after days of travel, they reached the edge of an ancient temple, a massive, crumbling structure hidden deep within the mountain range. Its stone walls were covered in centuries-old inscriptions, and the air was thick with the scent of damp stone and decay. There was a quiet hum in the air, as if the temple itself was alive, its heart still beating, pulsing with energy that resonated deep within the earth. "This is where it all began," the traveler said, his voice low and reverberating off the stone walls. "The true origin of the curse. This is the place where your bloodline was first touched by the darkness." Clara felt a chill sweep through her as she stepped forward, her eyes scanning the faded symbols etched into the temple's entrance. The marks were similar to the ones she had seen in the village, the same symbols that had surrounded the altar and the fog. But here, they were more intricate, more potent, as if the very stones had absorbed centuries of history. Inside, the traveler continued, his gaze never leaving her. "You will find what you need, but beware, Clara. The truth here is not easily uncovered. The forces you seek to understand are old and powerful. They will test you." Clara's mind raced. She had thought she was prepared, that by confronting the creature beneath the village, she had ended the curse. But now, as she stood at the entrance to the temple, she realized that what she had destroyed was only a fragment, a piece of a much larger whole. The true source of her family's legacy, the true nature of the power within her, lay hidden in these ancient stones. With a deep breath, Clara entered the temple. The interior was vast, a cavernous space illuminated by the faint glow of crystals embedded in the walls. The air was heavy, thick with a strange, musty scent. As she moved deeper, Clara could feel the presence of something ancient and powerful pressing in on her, like the weight of history itself. The walls were lined with intricate carvings, depictions of people, of events, of symbols that felt both familiar and alien. The stories of her ancestors, written in stone, whispered to her as she passed. At the far end of the temple, a large altar stood, bathed in a soft, eerie light. The altar was not like the one in the village. It was far older, its surface covered in cryptic symbols and worn by the passage of time. It pulsed with energy, and Clara could feel the power emanating from it, thrumming in the air. "Approach," the traveler said, his voice now distant, as though he were no longer beside her. "The answers are here, but be warned, Clara, what you seek will come at a cost." Clara took a step forward, her heart racing. She reached out, her fingers brushing the cold surface of the altar. The moment she made contact, a rush of images flooded her mind, visions of her ancestors, of rituals long forgotten, of the curse that had been passed down through the generations. She saw her grandfather, not as the man she had known, but as a young man, bound by the same darkness that had once bound her family. She saw Isabel, her face twisted in anguish, her power intertwined with the very land that had cursed the village. But most of all, Clara saw herself, her true self. The power within her, the legacy of her bloodline, was not just a curse. It was something more, something ancient, something that had been waiting for her to unlock it. "Your family's bloodline is bound to this temple," the voice of the traveler echoed in her mind, though he was nowhere to be seen. "Your ancestors made a pact here, a pact that has cursed them, bound them to the land. But you, Clara Sutherland, are different. You are the key to breaking the chain, or to reinforcing it." Clara gasped, stepping back, her mind spinning with the weight of the revelation. She wasn't just the end of the curse, she was its continuation, its final piece. The traveler's words lingered in her mind. "The true origin of the curse lies within you. You must decide whether to destroy it once and for all, or to embrace it, to use it for your own gain." The walls of the temple seemed to close in around her, the power of the altar pressing down on her with unbearable force. Clara's heart beat in her chest like a drum, and she could feel the strength of the power inside her, waiting for her to make a choice. But what choice could she make? What was the right decision? The village was free, but what of her? What of the power she had awakened within herself? Was she destined to become the very thing she had fought against? Or could she control it, use it to protect the world from what had come before? As Clara stood there, torn between two paths, a voice as familiar and soft spoke from the shadows. "You are not alone in this," it said. "The choice is yours. But remember that you are the last of your bloodline. What you decide will shape the future. Clara turned to see the figure of her grandfather, his ghostly form standing in the doorway, his face solemn yet proud. You have the strength to break the curse, Clara, he said, but you must choose wisely. This is your destiny, your burden, your salvation. Clara's breath caught in her throat. The weight of the decision felt unbearable. But she knew one thing for certain: whatever path she chose, she would no longer be controlled by the past. She would be the one to shape the future. With a steady hand, Clara turned back to the altar. It was time to face the truth of her bloodline, to choose the fate of the power that ran through her veins. The temple waited in silence, as did the world beyond, and Clara, for the first time in her life, felt truly free.